Hi, everybody. Mark Stone, Eastern Propane and Oil. Been with Eastern for, this is my 14th year, but been involved with JD Edwards for quite a bit longer than that. Very exciting times to be a JD Edwards customer. And looking forward to sharing what we're doing with Swift with you all. So Eastern Propane is, as the slide says, a premier propane distributor in the Northeast. We're an oil and gas downstream marketer of not just the energy products, but also service products. So we deliver fuel to 100,000 plus residential and commercial customers, and we also provide service to them. We've been on JDE since 2012. We're currently on 9.2 apps, and our tool set is 9.256. And we use quite a few modules. We have them listed here to help support our business. In addition to the modules you see there, we have a number of customizations that we needed to make in order to make JDE work for our business. Which kind of goes into the total cost of ownership. The reason we initially got into JD was because it was flexible and you could make changes to it and make it yours and allow you to use it to help you differentiate from your competition. In addition to JD Edwards, we have Oracle Sales Cloud, Oracle Field Service, Decart Logistics. That's the application that we use for delivery. And a few other applications, including Swift, that we provide to our employees that allow them to do their everyday jobs. Our strategy for the past 10 years has been to extend the functionality of JD Edwards using cloud applications. And we've found that the orchestrator has been absolutely instrumental in allowing for us to do that. And nearly every one of the applications that you see listed on that screen has an integration that's based on the orchestrator. So we have been early. We took on the orchestrator early, and we continue to count on it as the basis of our strategy moving forward. The last point about Eastern that I think is important for this conversation is that last bullet, and that Eastern is made up of 2/3 mobile employees. Most of the people that work at Eastern don't work in an office. So they need to have a way to get information out in the field and capture information and then return it to our system of record so that we can bill our customers. And again, Orchestrator and now Swift are two really important parts of that. So why did Eastern select Swift? This came about last year at the beginning of a pretty significant project that Eastern was undertaking to replace a legacy delivery system. We've been using a delivery system since 2014 that for a few reasons needed to be replaced. As part of the project, we started to implement, and it became apparent that there were a few gaps that we thought initially we would be able to address with the new solution, and we weren't able to do so. We started looking around for solutions for this, and based on these bullet points, we were looking for something that was going to be easy for us to implement quickly and to maintain with the resources that we had. It had to be device agnostic because we had a couple of different devices that we're using in the field. JD Edwards was going to be the system of record, and we prefer to use the orchestrator for the integrations. And we wanted to have some familiarity with the partner so that they understood JD Edwards. We needed to make this happen quickly, and it was important for us that we hit the ground running and that we're all talking the same talk in regards to applications when we brought the vendor on board. Security was also really important. Security is very important to us here at Eastern, as it is everywhere else. But those are the main things that we were looking for, Ephlux has delivered on every single one of them. All of the bullet points covered on the screen are absolutely true. It's business analyst friendly. We found that when we were creating, we could create a relatively simple design document, a functional / technical design document. And when we gave it to the folks at Ephlux, they were able to immediately understand what we were talking about. It was all apples to apple. So it was very business analyst friendly. They actually already had, for one of our applications, that one of our needs, they had a solution that almost completely covered it. That was a big help. It also covered the ability to work on both of the devices that we used. We used actually all three of them. We used an Android device, we use iPhones, and we use Windows tablets on our legacy application. They both could be customized, or we like to call it Easternized, so that our users had the ability to do both of these things in our legacy application, and we were able to make the forms look like they were used to, which was a huge plus. Obviously, the ability to take the JD Edwards functionality out so that we weren't having to reinvent anything inside JD Edwards was really a big thing. It helped us from so many points, not to mention the least of which is the fact that we didn't have to create anything new to make this stuff work. We can move on to the next one. I'll describe the two applications that we use. The first one that we implemented was time entry. This is exactly how it sounds. Our delivery team needed to be able to enter their time. They also needed to be able to see their time that they'd already entered for the week. So they enter their time typically daily, and then they submit it on Friday. They do a lot of overtime, especially this time of year. So their time is kind of complicated. There's a mix of different variables that they need to be able to select to enter their time. The application that Ephlux helped us create on Swift was able to cover all that stuff really easily, and it came able to connect to the orchestrations that we have, the forms that we have set up in JD Edwards into the JD Edwards interoperability out of the box. So we were able to implement this really quickly. As I said before, we were able to make it look like the current application. So training was almost a non-event, and the information that we were capturing on the Swift app flowed into JD Edwards exactly like it did in the legacy application. So our inside people didn't know any different. So it was a fantastic solution for us that Ephlux was able to deliver to us in a fraction of the time I think it would have taken for us to develop this without it. So the mobile time entry was a huge success for us. Moving on to the other app, this was one that came up later in the project. Actually, after we had started to roll it out, we discovered that there was an issue with our on-call. And on-call at Eastern means after hours, which, as you can imagine, based on where we are, when it's cold out, we do a lot of after-hours deliveries. And the real root of the problem is when our drivers go to an on-call to make an on-call delivery, they get to the yard where our trucks are parked, and they assume that they're going to be using the trucks that they were assigned, but it's not guaranteed. There are a couple variables that can make them need to take another truck. First and foremost, and the biggest one, is if the truck doesn't start. That actually happens more than you'd think. The trucks are diesel, and when it gets really, really cold, sometimes they don't work. The second issue that they run into is inventory. If a truck has been run all day and it wasn't recharged before the on-call shift, it might make more sense to take another truck. The problem we had is with our new application, there was no way for the driver to change the truck on their route. And what that means is when our customer service people get the emergency call out from our customer, they create an order in JD Edwards and it goes into the planner, and the planner is assigned to a truck. If all those things don't line up, when the driver starts the shift up for the on-call, he's not seeing the order that he needs to see. So what we found is that when things started to pick up here in November, December, when it started getting cold, we were having a lot of misses where our drivers would need to go and make ad hoc orders for these on-call emergency deliveries, which creates a mess for us the next day. What we needed to do was give them the ability to change the truck on these routes so that the order that we're creating for them goes to them. And that's where Ephlux stepped in to help us. The application that we created was custom. Again, we created a relatively simple design document, a functional and technical, that the Ephlux team was able to immediately understand because of their familiarity with JD Edwards. But an interesting part about this new application is that it doesn't just talk to JD Edwards. It also has the ability to talk to our logistics and routing application, which is Decart. And that's really where the heavy lifting happens. It talks to JD Edwards to get general information about the trucks and the driver, but it needs to talk to the Decart system in order to understand what the route is, and then to actually change the truck on the route. It does so via an API that is hosted by Decart. So again, our drivers were already familiar with Swift because they've been using the time and attendance. The application looks and feels just like the application that they were using for time and attendance. And they obviously understood the concepts, so that they need to change the truck. So it was really easy for us to slide this in, and the project to develop it was really easy because we were able to utilize analyst people that understood the processes, but didn't need to understand the real technical part of it because the heavy lifting was done with Swift. This was a huge, a great experience for us to work with Ephlux to make this happen. But it was a huge bonus for us to be able to get this into production as quickly as we were able to, because we were faced with a winter of a lot of hardship based on the fallout from having these trucks not be set up correctly on the routes. If we weren't able to put this into production, we would have had to have to bring on an additional on-call shift every night from logistics in order to make these changes happen. So as far as efficiency is concerned and automation, there can't be a better use case than this for that.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot, Mark. Thanks for a detailed sort of description of how Swift is helping you, and that's really good to hear, and makes us very happy and proud to be able to support you with that process. A couple of questions for you. There's one infamous quote that has become, has done some rounds. That you kind of uttered one of the customer reference calls, where you mentioned that while finalizing a decision whether to go with Swift, we were thinking that there's an approach we've taken for the last 20 years, and then Swift, should we keep on that approach, or should we take the new paradigm which can take us to the next 20? And your sort of decision was to go with something that can take you to the next 20. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, I think this goes along with our strategy in general, Ali. We there's a need in this industry, and I imagine in every industry, to continue to push the envelope with the applications that you supply to your employees and to your customers. And the way that we have chosen to do it is to push out with cloud solutions and to keep JD Edwards as our system of record. And what Swift allows for us to do is to fill in the gaps that are going to naturally be created as we attempt to do so. We try to Easternize everything here at Eastern. We really like customization, and you can't just make customization on your back office. If you're going to push this this kind of functionality out into the field, you've got to have a means to make that happen. And Swift is that means to make that happen. I think another important factor to that is, especially with other cloud applications, the ability to push something out there, to have something in your back pocket like a Swift, gives you the means of I call it like a glue, to be able to pull together functionality that may not exist in the cloud application that you need to still do in the field, but that does exist in JD Edwards. So I'm not sure if that perfectly answered your question, Lee, but that's really how we look at it. It's the glue that holds this all together. And
I think that sort of covers the overall sort of message. So thanks for that. I've got 3 more questions here from one of our other customer. For customizations that you need on Swift, which route you selected, whether to do it in Swift or first do it in JDE and then use Swift on top of it. So that's the first question for you.
Okay, could you repeat that, please?
For the customizations that you needed on Swift, which route did you go to? Whether you did those customizations in Swift or you build those customizations in JDE and then use Swift on top?
Yeah, so we did the customizations. The user interface was in Swift, and we used the orchestrator to build APIs that provided Swift with the information that they need to present in the application, and then with the APIs if we're doing any updating or inserting in JD Edwards. So it's a little bit of both, but the user interface was done with Swift, and it was easy to do because Swift can naturally use the APIs that you create in the orchestrator.
Sure. I've got 3 more questions for you. One of them is, how do you synchronize the changes between Swift and JDE? What is the governance that you use? If you can just quickly respond to that or do a follow-up on it. The other question is regarding change management. How did you manage the changes using Swift? And are there any critical issues that you faced after using Swift integration with JDE?
Well, I'll answer the last one first. There's been no issues that we've had so far with the integration. It's been seamless. It's been like everything else that we've used with the orchestrator. And I think another important part of that answer is that the fact that it's in we're using the orchestrator and really gives us visibility that we may not have if we were using another tool. It not only gives us the visibility, but we already are familiar with the product. So our people, if something were to go wrong, they would know where to look and where to make the changes.
Okay, so yeah, so one last question I'll ask you, Mark, before we move to AJ. How was the feedback from the field? Any complaints about the number of taps that they have to make on the apps?
No, none at all. The time and attendance, like I said, was very similar to what they were used to in the legacy application, and the driver change app was so welcome that I think that they would have done anything. But several clicks is much better than having to call up somebody in logistics and drag them out of bed to make this happen. So absolutely no complaints. The change management was negligible.
Thanks a lot, Mark. It's a pleasure to have both of you, and I hope that everybody benefited from our session that we had put together.
Thanks, Ali.